Britain needs to decide where it stands. You can't just sit on the fence.
Let's talk to Eylon Levy, though, because he's been reporting this morning the Israeli stock market is looking incredibly healthy. He's also going to let us know how it's all going in Israel with the Iron Dome and the protection from missiles coming in from Iran. But, of course, just for a change, Israel's not being accused anymore of what you might call aggressive attacks, because it turns out that Iran has attacked more Arab nations in the past 48 hours than Israel has ever attacked. So let's get Elon's view and see what's going on. Elon, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well indeed, very well indeed. Very encouraged by what's going on. You know, unlike some broadcasters who will ask you ridiculous questions about whether it's justified to attack a murderous, ghastly killing machine with complete and utter impunity, I will say well done, and I apologise once again for the uselessness of our Prime Minister, who doesn't seem to know whether he supports it or not.
Mike, the Iranian regime has declared war on Britain. I don't think people understand what is happening now. The Iranian regime fired a drone at British base on the sovereign territory on Cyprus. This is after trying to shoot missiles at that base. Britain might not think that this is its fight. The Iranian regime begs to differ. And frankly, it's been extremely disappointing to see Prime Minister Starmer coming out with a statement saying, we had absolutely nothing to do with the US strikes, and then coming up with another statement that started with, yesterday I told you we had nothing to do with the strikes, and now I can update we still have nothing to do with those strikes. Britain needs to decide where it stands. You can't just sit on the fence as Iran continues to attack British troops who are sitting there basically as sitting ducks. And it looks like the UK's position now is that it sort of agrees with the American and Israeli attacks on Iran's ballistic missiles because it sees they're a threat. It's just quite happy to wash its hands of it and let someone else do their dirty work for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's worse than that in a way, isn't it? Because I think I saw a description of the attack on Cyprus as, you know, it was a sort of an accident. The Iranians weren't targeting Cyprus. They weren't targeting British troops or British installations or British people. They were sort of just generally firing things in that direction. You're kind of going, sorry? Why are you bending over backwards to try to not blame Iran for being murderous bastards?
Cyprus is 1,000 miles away from Iran. Believe me, they weren't firing at dolphins off the coast of Limassol. This was a deliberate act of aggression by the Iranian regime against sovereign British territory. And the British people need to understand, sometimes you don't pick the fight picks you. The Iranian regime is a threat to the whole world. In the last few days, it has declared war on the entire Middle East, shooting drones and missiles at hotels and malls and homes all across the Gulf, Dubai, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, all over the region. It is totally out of control. And that's why Israel and the United States are taking the very bold action that the Starmer government can't decide whether it supports or not, to take this regime down a notch and give the Iranian people, the bold, brave Iranian people, a chance to rise up, take their country back, and enjoy the freedoms that you and I take for granted.
And is it not a massive diplomatic error by Iran? And maybe they don't care, and maybe because they're kind of a bit rudderless in terms of leadership right now, they can't really make proper decisions. But surely it's not going to help them in the long run to be launching missiles at places like Jordan and the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait and Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
The decision by the Iranian regime to lash out at the entire Middle East is a catastrophic strategic misjudgment. I think what they thought would happen is that these Arab countries would run to the US and say, you've got to stop the attacks on the Iranian regime immediately, that they could browbeat them into submission to get the Americans to call off the attack. It's having the opposite effect. America and the Arab nations just put out a statement saying they reaffirm their right to self-defense. That means they're not ruling out joining the attacks on the Islamic regime because it is dangerous, because it is weak like a wounded animal, and they want to finish off the threat from the Ayatollahs who have brought so much death and destruction to the region. But hey, Mike, it's not the first time. The October 7th massacre initiated by an Iranian proxy army, Hamas, will go down in history as one of the biggest strategic blunders in modern military history. The Iranian regime surrounded Israel with a ring of fire, a network of proxy armies, so they could press the button and destroy Israel at the moment of their choosing. It backfired, exploded in their faces, and has led to Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis all decimated, and now Israeli jets controlling the skies of Tehran, achieving aerial supremacy in only 24 hours. Everything in the last few years from the Iranian regime has been one strategic miscalculation after the other, and it's clear we are not dealing with a rational actor. We are dealing with a fanatical, fundamentalist regime that worships death and destruction. And I only wish that Britain understood the extent of that threat. I think many British people understand it. I don't think the British government does.
The British government doesn't understand why they lost a by-election in their fourth safest seat in the country. Never mind, what the British people actually want from them. But more interestingly, though, for me, what is going to happen in Tehran over the next few days? We've seen Russia and China making noises at the United Nations, saying they want to discuss what's going on, because clearly that's the kind of axis of evil, if you like. We know that the Russians and the Chinese are buying the oil from Iran, shipping it over to China. We know that there is a sort of, if you like, an unspoken agreement between those three countries that they must stand up against what they would call the West and possibly Israel as well, in terms of anything that the West and Israel might want to do. But what's actually happening in Iran? Who's running it? And how soon could it be before there's nobody running it?
By the way, if we're talking about the British government's complete lack of understanding about what is happening, can we talk about Emily Thornberry's historically illiterate, tone-deaf tweets claiming that wars are always resolved through negotiations? This is the head of the House of Commons Foreign Affairs Committee, who seems to have forgotten that Britain owes its freedom to total victory over Nazi Germany, which surrendered unconditionally and submitted itself to Allied occupation. Thank God Winston Churchill didn't say, well, we have to negotiate our way out of this mess. He saw a threat to the free world and he fought it instead of trying to kick the can down the road. And that's where we are now. They think there is a diplomatic solution to a regime that swears death to America, death to Israel, death to England, death to everyone who doesn't agree with us, that hangs gay people from cranes and beats up women in the street for leaving their hair uncovered. It is simply unfathomable. Now, as for what's happening in Tehran, well, in the opening strike, Israel took out over 40 senior Iranian regime officials. We killed the supreme leader, the tyrant of Tehran. That's why Iranian exiles were celebrating outside Downing Street yesterday, by the way, singing the Israeli national anthem to say thank you for killing Khamenei. We took out the head of the Revolutionary Guards, which the UK is still dragging its feet on prescribing as a terrorist organization while Israel is busy flattening the commander. Took out the head of the Iranian army, the Iranian supreme leader's advisor, the entire top brass. President Trump said, I don't know whether half joking, that there are several people who might take over Iran, but they too were killed in the opening strike. And President Trump is now telling the Iranians, because this is a joint US-Israeli offensive, you have two options: surrender or die. Lay down your arms and receive total immunity or face certain death, and it won't be pretty. Quote from the United States president, end quote. So I think the United States is looking for someone who can either negotiate an agreement that will end Iranian aggression, or here's the point. Israel and the United States are creating the conditions for the Iranian people to rise up and take their country back. We all saw just a few weeks ago how the Iranian people took to the streets chanting death to the dictator, and they were slaughtered in their tens of thousands and no one came to save them. And world leaders paid lip service about supporting the Iranian people and threw them under a bus. Well, now Israeli fighter jets control the skies of Tehran, so I'd like to see you try. The Iranian people are going to be given a chance to take their country back, and I hope if they can form a free, democratic Iran, I have no doubt it will be a powerful, prosperous country that will be at peace with Israel, peace with America, peace with Britain, and one of the most incredible countries in the region. and the world once they get rid of the tyrants who have immiserated them for nearly 50 years.
And an incredible story that I have to ask you about, and I don't know whether you can tell us whether it's true. I read over the weekend, and I've mentioned it on the show already this morning, that apparently Mossad spent the last several years infiltrating Iran with groups of people who masqueraded as doctors and dentists, who probably were doctors and dentists, but while they were there, treating various members of the government, various sort of high-up military figures and sort of the elites, if you like, of Iran, they basically planted tracking devices inside their teeth, in other parts of their bodies, etc. And so that made them able to know exactly where these people were when they decided to take them out. Similar to the Hezbollah pager story. It's Mission Impossible stuff. Incredible, if true.
I have no idea whether the doctor and dentist story is true or just rumors on Twitter. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it is true, because it's clear that Israel has completely penetrated the Iranian regime in terms of intelligence. I mean, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former Iranian prime minister, who may or may not have been killed yesterday, gave an interview recently in which he said that Iran had set up a unit to find Mossad spies, and then it turned out the head of the unit was a Mossad spy, and so were 20 people working underneath him. So it's clear Israel has spent years penetrating the regime because it understands that this regime is an existential threat. And you know, the fact that such a story straight out of sci-fi sounds completely reasonable and logical just tells you how much Israel has managed to inspire people around the world with its truly James Bond type of daring do against the Iranian Axis.
I mean, there's been no doubt, though, that as you said, the ring of fire that was supposed to surround Israel from Lebanon to Gaza to all sort of masterminded by Iran has all gone horribly wrong. The Israelis have been too clever for them in the end.
Yeah, that ring of fire has been completely dismantled. This is not the war the Iranian regime was expecting. It thought that it could build a nuclear bomb and Israel would be powerless to stop it because they could launch missiles from Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen at the same time, and that would leave the Iranian regime free to build a nuke. That backfired spectacularly because Israel cut these terrorist armies down to size in order to clear the way for a joint operation with the US to blow up the Iranian nuclear project. But Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they're down, but they're not out. Hezbollah has joined the war on the side of the Iranian regime. At 1 o'clock in the morning, they fired drones and missiles towards Haifa, Israel's biggest city in the north. And Israel has responded with fierce airstrikes, ordering the evacuation of Lebanese villages. Let's remember, the last war with Hezbollah ended with a diplomatic solution. How great? Who doesn't want a diplomatic solution? Saying that the Lebanese government has to disarm Hezbollah. And they failed miserably. Frankly, I don't think they tried. They were scared to pick a fight with Hezbollah. And Hezbollah rearmed instead of disarming. And now Hezbollah has made the terrible mistake to try to save the Islamic Republic by taking some potshots at Israel in the north. And Israel is going after Hezbollah in order to totally dismantle it. We are done with the days in which terrorist armies sitting on our borders can fire rockets and drones at will and expect Israel to fight with two hands behind its back. I don't think the British people would tolerate a single day of rocket fire or drone attacks from jihadist armies sitting on their borders. I mean, being in the middle of the sea helps, and Israel certainly isn't going to put up with it either.
No. And what about the Strait of Hormuz and the problem with tankers and oil and supply and the energy markets, which are probably going to react today? We haven't really seen quite what's happened yet, but is there a danger that's the Iranians' kind of final resting place, if you like, is to worry the oil business to such an extent because of what they can threaten, that's where they're going to go next?
The Iranian regime has essentially declared war on the entire global economy by blockading the Straits of Hormuz. This is the entry point for a fifth of the world's oil. By not letting ships in or out, they are trapping ships in the Persian Gulf where they are sitting ducks for Iranian missiles and Iranian drones. This is an attempt to take the entire world economy hostage and say, if you don't let us build nuclear weapons unmolested, we are going to target your tankers and we are going to make every single person in the world pay in their pockets. And I really hope that the world realizes you don't appease a regime like Iran. You don't just feed the tiger, give it what it wants, and hope that it's going to go away. A regime that is willing to undertake the dangerous and reckless step of blockading the Strait of Hormuz is not a regime that can be allowed to govern a powerful, impressive country like Iran a day longer. And that's why everyone should be asking, how do we help the Iranian people take their country back? How do we make sure that this war doesn't end with the Iranian regime, a wounded animal, licking its wounds and vowing revenge? How do we make sure it ends with this millennia-old civilization of Persia, of Iran, of those brave people, building a free country that wants to be at peace with its neighbors, instead of women living in fear that if they show a little bit of hair in the street, they're going to get beaten up by regime thugs?
Absolutely right. And you mentioned Haifa, obviously, there, and Hezbollah firing a few missiles into northern Israel. What about life in Tel Aviv, life in Jerusalem, life in Israel in general at the moment? How is that?
Morale is high. We have been running in and out of the bomb shelters for the last 2 days. The rocket sirens have been non-stop. Some people are sleeping even in underground stations, just like in the Blitz, seeking shelter from the missiles, because this is dangerous. Some of the missiles are getting through. One hit a building in Tel Aviv the other night and killed 2 people. Yesterday, an Iranian ballistic missile scored a direct hit on a bomb shelter and killed 9 people. It wiped out a whole family. This is a very serious, deadly threat. But the Israeli people know we don't want Iranian missiles falling on our cities. We can't afford for thousands of them to fall on our cities. And that's why people are saying, keep calm, carry on, stiff upper lip. When there's a siren, you run for shelter. You know where the nearest shelter is. You stay calm. You stay there until the emergency services tell you that you can leave, because our army is doing a really important job in taking apart the bad guys and making sure the region and the world are going to be safer for generations to come.
Eylon, great to speak to you. Stay safe, obviously, where you are, and good luck. Best of luck with it. I mean, you may not have Starmer's support, but you certainly got mine. Unfortunately, I'm not sitting in Downing Street, but there you are.
Thank you, Mike.
To see you. Eylon Levy, former prime ministerial spokesperson for the State of Israel, now podcaster, of course, as well. Great guy. Really, really good. Some fantastic super chats and comments coming in. This one from Sue. Please, oh please, will somebody take charge of our country? Our government needs to get a grip. Well, you would think so, wouldn't you?